This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're examining a conversation happening among men over 60 that most people outside that circle never hear clearly enough to understand what's actually being said. It's not a conversation about not wanting companionship. These men aren't avoiding connection. Many are in relationships. Some are deeply in love. It's not a conversation about being closed off, damaged, or incapable of genuine intimacy. These are men who've loved, committed, built lives with partners, raised families. It's a very specific and very carefully considered conversation about one particular decision that smart men over 60 are making with increasing consistency and increasing conviction, never letting a woman move into their home. And the reasons behind that decision are not emotional. They're not bitter. They're not the result of too many bad experiences turning a man against the world. They're rational. They're informed. They're backed by a level of real-world consequence that most people who've never lived through them don't fully understand until it's far too late to apply what they learned. Today, we're examining exactly why smart men over 60 are making this decision, the legal exposure that cohabitation creates, why a man's home is the headquarters of his peace and disrupting it is the most expensive mistake he can make, what happens to relationship dynamics the moment she moves in, the financial gravitational pull that operates regardless of intentions, the visibility problem that reveals the unedited version, the exit complexity that makes leaving nearly impossible, the psychological territory that home represents, when this boundary should ever be reconsidered, and most critically, why this decision demonstrates profound wisdom rather than emotional damage. This is not about hating women. This is not about avoiding commitment. This is about men who've built something precious after decades of sacrifice, and recognizing that protecting what they've built serves everyone better than destroying it through decisions made in moments of emotion rather than clarity. Stay with me. This will explain decisions that confuse people who haven't earned the wisdom to make them. The fundamental principle, understanding what's actually being protected before we examine the specific reasons, let me establish what men over 60 are actually protecting when they refuse to let women move in. It's not just a house to outsiders. This looks like a man refusing to share his home, selfishness about space, fear of commitment, inability to be generous, emotional damage from past relationships. But to the man who's made this decision, his home represents everything he survived: divorce, loss, financial devastation, starting over, rebuilding from nothing. Everything he rebuilt piece by piece, year by year, establishing stability after chaos. Everything he protected, from creditors, from ex-partners, from family who wanted pieces of it, from his own impulses to give it away to people who didn't deserve it. Everything he chose for himself, after decades of choosing for everyone else, wife, children, parents, employers, this is the one thing that's entirely his. His sovereignty, the physical manifestation of personal autonomy he earned through 6 decades of sacrifice. His peace, the only space on earth where everything is exactly as he decided without compromise, negotiation, or managing someone else's needs. This is not just about protecting an asset. It's about protecting everything that asset represents. Autonomy, peace, hard-won wisdom applied to life design. Reason 1. The legal exposure most men don't understand until it's too late. The first reason is the legal exposure that cohabitation creates, exposure far greater than most men realize until they're already inside it. What most men think they know. Most men over 60 are aware of divorce law in a general sense. They know marriage creates legal entanglement. They know divorce costs money and assets. Many have already paid that cost firsthand. They think, I won't get married again, so I'm safe from those consequences. But what a much smaller number of men fully understand is, in many parts of the country, a woman does not need to be married to a man to acquire legal rights over his property, his assets, and his financial future. The legal traps of cohabitation, common law marriage, 7 states currently recognize it. In these states, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Montana, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Texas, plus District of Columbia, a couple that lives together and presents themselves publicly as a couple can be treated by courts as legally married regardless of whether they ever had a ceremony or signed documents. The triggers, living together for a specific duration, varies by state, presenting as married publicly, introducing as wife, filing joint anything, sharing last names, intent to be married, can be proven through testimony, behavior patterns. Result, she acquires same rights as legal spouse in divorce, potentially entitled to half of assets acquired during cohabitation, alimony, support, share of retirement accounts. Palimony claims, recognized in approximately 30 additional states, Even without common law marriage, she can claim financial support based on promise of support, verbal or implied, pattern of financial dependency during relationship, sacrifices made for relationship, career, relocation, etc., standard of living established during cohabitation cases where men lost. Man provided housing and financial support for 8 years. She claimed he promised to support her indefinitely. Court awarded her $400,000. Man allowed girlfriend to quit job and move in. After 5 years, she sued for support equivalent to salary she would have earned. Won 3 years of payments. Man bought house in his name. Girlfriend lived there 6 years contributing to household but not mortgage. She claimed ownership interest. Court awarded her 25% of equity. Dependency claims, potentially available in every state. She can establish legal right to financial support based on pattern of provision during cohabitation creating dependency, implied contract through behavior, he supported her, creating expectation of continuation, unjust enrichment, he benefited from her presence, services, contributions, tenant rights, several states. Once she's lived there certain duration, she acquires tenant rights that require formal eviction proceedings to remove her, even when her name is not on the lease or deed. This means you cannot just ask her to leave. You must go through legal eviction process, 30 to 90 days minimum. She has right to remain in your home during proceedings. If she contests, process extends months. You may have to continue providing utilities, access during this time. Legal costs can reach $5,000 to $15,000. Why this matters, especially at 60 plus a man over 60 who allows a woman to move into his home, is not just making a lifestyle decision, he's potentially making a legal and financial decision with consequences that can reach his retirement accounts built over 40 years, his property purchased with his money, maintained with his labor, his pension earned through decades of work, his investments accumulated through careful planning, everything he spent decades building and years rebuilding. After previous losses, the legal system did not protect him the first time. When he divorced, lost half or more, started over, the system sided with his ex, regardless of circumstances. There is no compelling reason to believe it will protect him differently the second time. That lesson was expensive enough to only need learning once. Reason 2. Home is headquarters of peace. The second reason is that a man's home is the headquarters of his peace, and peace once disrupted inside your own home is the most expensive thing you will ever try to recover. What he's actually built, a man over 60 who has spent years building a life inside his own space, has created something most people fundamentally underestimate, not just a physical environment, a carefully calibrated ecosystem of silence, no background noise unless he chooses it, no television he didn't turn on, no conversations he didn't initiate, pure silence when he wants it. Routine, morning begins exactly as he designed. Coffee made his way at his time in his pace. Breakfast when he's hungry, not when someone else's schedule demands. Day unfolds according to his rhythm. Independence, every decision unilateral. No consultation required, no negotiation needed, no compromising on preferences, complete autonomy over his environment and schedule. Personal sovereignty, the temperature is his, set to his preference, not negotiated. The refrigerator contains exactly what he chose. The furniture is arranged how he wants it. The noise level is controlled by him. Every detail reflects his choice. This took years to build. After divorce or widowhood, he rebuilt his life piece by piece, figured out what he actually likes when no one else's preferences matter, created an environment that genuinely fits him rather than compromising to accommodate others. And it functions as the foundation of everything else that makes his life genuinely his own. What happens when she moves in the moment another person moves into that space? All of it becomes subject to negotiation. Phase 1, small adjustments, weeks 1 to 4. The changes start subtly. Temperature adjusts to compromise between preferences. His morning routine shifts slightly to accommodate her schedule. Silence gets interrupted by her phone calls, TV shows, music. Refrigerator fills with foods he wouldn't choose. Bathroom space divides to accommodate her products. Furniture gets rearranged, just slightly, to fit her preferences. He thinks, these are small things. Relationships require compromise. This is normal adjustment. Phase 2, routine disruption. Months 2 to 6, the disruptions expand. His schedule bends around hers, doctor appointments, social commitments, family obligations. His quiet evenings become social evenings when she wants company. His weekend plans accommodate her preferences. His eating schedule adjusts to her meal times. His sleep schedule changes to match hers. His space that felt entirely His begins to feel shared in ways never explicitly agreed upon, he thinks. This is what living together means. I'm being a good partner by accommodating. Phase 3. Environmental transformation, months 6 to 12. The space itself changes. Decorating happens. Together, meaning her preferences prevail. His furniture gets replaced with pieces she prefers. His organization system changes to hers. His quiet spaces become shared spaces. His sanctuary becomes communal living area. His peace becomes permanent negotiation. He thinks, I barely recognize this place. This doesn't feel like mine anymore, but saying that would sound selfish. The irreversibility problem and recovering that original configuration once it has been disrupted inside your own home is almost never possible without ending the relationship entirely. Because to reclaim his space, he'd have to tell her to move out, relationship-ending conversation, undo all changes she's made, insulting everything she contributed, restore his routines that now seem selfish because she's used to shared schedule, reclaim silence that now feels like excluding her. It cannot be done partially. It's all or nothing, relationship or sanctuary. But not both once she's moved in. A man over 60 who has found genuine peace inside his own home is not being selfish by protecting it. He's being the most intelligent version of himself. Reason 3, the relationship dynamic transformation. The third reason is what happens to the relationship dynamic itself the moment a woman moves in, and it almost never happens the way either person expected it would. The dynamic before cohabitation. Before she moves in, a man over 60 holds specific relational balance he rarely consciously recognizes until it's gone. Separate spaces. He has his home. She has hers. Both are sovereign in their own domains. Voluntary presence, the relationship exists in the territory between those spaces. They choose to be together each time they're together. Natural equality, both people enter shared time voluntarily and leave it voluntarily. Neither is trapped by logistics, obligation, or complexity of shared habitation. Mutual desire, every interaction happens because both people want it. No one is there by default of living situation. That voluntary quality gives the dynamic an equality and naturalness that feels sustainable and genuinely mutual, because it is. Both people are choosing to be present every single time they're present. Neither person is trapped. Neither is accommodating by obligation. It's genuine mutual choice. The dynamic, after cohabitation, the moment a woman moves into a man's home, that voluntary quality changes in ways that are both immediate and almost impossible to reverse. She's now inside his space full time. Her presence is no longer a choice she makes each time. It's default state. Her departure is no longer simple. She can't just go home. She is home. Leaving means moving out, finding new place, ending cohabitation, major decision rather than simple departure. The voluntary quality disappears. They're together by default of living situation, not continuous mutual choice. Power dynamic shifts subtly. She's in his space on his terms, even if unspoken. He's the host, landlord, provider. She's the guest, tenant, dependent, even if contributing financially. The man who felt like equal partner before she moved in frequently discovers he feels like something closer to landlord, responsible for the space, making decisions about it, maintaining it, provider, expected to supply, accommodate, manage her comfort in his space. Permanent accommodator, constantly adjusting his preferences to make room for hers in space that used to be entirely his inside his own home. Why this destroys the relationship that shift in dynamic is not anyone's fault. It's simply what cohabitation produces. The equality that made the relationship appealing dissolves into host-guest dynamic. He owns the space, she occupies it. Provider, dependent, even if she contributes, it's his house. Accommodator, accommodated, his space becoming shared creates imbalance. And smart men over 60 understand that protecting the voluntary quality of the relationship by keeping separate spaces is not a failure of commitment. It's the most intelligent way to preserve the dynamic that made the relationship worth having in the first place. Reason 4, the financial gravitational pull. The fourth reason is the financial dynamic that develops inside a shared household, regardless of how clearly both people understood their individual financial boundaries before the move happened. How it starts, months 1 to 3, it doesn't begin with demands or pressure or obvious financial overreach. It begins with needs. Small ones at first. Can you grab groceries this week? I'll get them next week. But next week she doesn't, and it becomes his expense. My car needs repair. Can you cover this month's utilities so I can pay for it? One time becomes pattern, let's eat out tonight, my treat. But somehow the bill ends up split or he pays. These feel entirely reasonable in context of relationship that's going well, and a generous man accommodates without giving them much thought. The gravitational pull, months 3 to 12, but shared households, have a financial gravitational pull that moves consistently in one direction regardless of intentions. Expenses expand, utilities increase, higher usage, food costs rise, eating at home more, her dietary preferences added, entertainment expenses grow, couple activities cost more than solo, household maintenance increases, more wear, higher standards, financial boundaries blur, what's his expense versus shared expense becomes unclear, who pays for what gradually defaults to he pays, her contributions, if any, become irregular while his become expected. Discussion about money becomes awkward because she lives there. Contributions become assumed rather than agreed upon. He's paying utilities because it's easier than asking her to contribute. He's covering groceries because tracking who pays what feels petty. He's handling repairs because it's his house. He's absorbing costs that technically should be shared. The man who was accommodating small needs in early months finds himself 12 months later inside a financial arrangement that nobody explicitly agreed to, but that has become the operating assumption of the relationship in ways that are both difficult to discuss and difficult to reverse. Why this is devastating at 60, plus a man over 60 who has rebuilt his finances after previous relationship, has home and retirement representing decades of work, has assets that took 40 years to accumulate, has limited working years remaining to recover losses, is not in a position to allow that gravitational pull to operate unchecked inside his own space. The financial protection that keeping a separate household provides is not a romantic gesture. It's the most important financial boundary he can maintain at this stage of his life, and the moment that boundary dissolves through logistics of shared habitation, it rarely gets reestablished without a conversation that costs the relationship more than the boundary was worth. Reason 5. The visibility problem. The fifth reason is what smart men over 60 call the visibility problem, the curated version. Before she moves in, both people present a curated version of themselves, not dishonestly, just naturally. The way all people present themselves when they know they'll be returning to their own space at the end of the interaction. There's natural effort, looking good, being engaging, consideration, aware of other person's preferences, best behavior, patience, kindness, generosity, awareness, monitoring how they're being perceived. This exists precisely because time together is finite and chosen, rather than permanent and assumed. The unedited reality after moving in, but the moment cohabitation begins, that curation ends, and everything underneath it becomes visible simultaneously. Habits that were endearing in small doses become features of permanent environment. Her tendency to leave things out seemed quirky during visits. Now it's daily cleaning he has to do. Her late-night phone calls were occasional. Now they're every night, disturbing his sleep. Her spontaneous social plans were exciting. Now they're constant interruptions of his peace. Quirks that seem charming become daily realities requiring daily accommodation. Her particular food preferences meant interesting dinners occasionally, now mean grocery shopping is complicated and expensive. Her need for temperature warmer than his preference was manageable during visits. Now his house is too hot year-round. Her emotional processing through talking was fine occasionally. Now it's hours of conversation he doesn't have energy for. The version of herself she presented during relationship before moving in, the version he chose, begins to give way to the full unedited version that only emerges when there's nowhere else to go and no reason to maintain the presentation. Why this matters, smart men over 60 have lived long enough to know the full unedited version of a person is the only version that actually matters. The curated version is performance. The unedited version is reality. And they've also lived long enough to know that discovering that version inside your own home after she's already moved in is fundamentally different and far more expensive experience than discovering it over time while both people still have option of returning to separate spaces. In separate homes, discover incompatibility, acknowledge it, part ways, painful but manageable. After she's moved in, discover incompatibility, now must either tolerate it indefinitely or go through traumatic process of making her move out, which destroys relationship and possibly triggers legal consequences. Reason 6. the exit complexity. The sixth reason is one most men don't consider until they're trapped by it: the ease of ending relationships with separate homes when you maintain separate residences. Ending relationship is straightforward. This isn't working. We should end this. Both people return to their own homes, no logistics to negotiate, no property entanglement, no eviction proceedings, clean break, painful emotionally, yes, but logistically simple. Hashtag rare, the nightmare of ending cohabitation. When she lives in your home, ending relationship becomes complex legal and emotional nightmare. Step 1, the conversation. This isn't working. You need to move out. Her likely response is, where will I go? I gave up my place to move in with you. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. She might be legally correct. Give me time to find a place. Months pass with increasing tension. I'm not leaving. This is my home too. Now you need legal proceedings. Step 2, the practical complications. You cannot force her out without legal eviction. 30 to 90 days minimum she remains in your home during this process. Living together while broken up is psychological torture. She may become hostile, damage property, make life hell. You're stuck with her having access to your space, possessions. Step 3, the legal process. If she refuses to leave voluntarily, file eviction notice, requires cause in many states. Wait for hearing, weeks to months. Court proceedings, expensive, time-consuming if she contests. Multiple hearings, even after winning, enforcement takes additional time. Total cost, $5,000 to $15,000 and 3 to 12 months. Step 4, the potential legal claims. Palimony suit, claiming she's entitled to support. Property claims, arguing she contributed to household, deserves compensation. Ownership claims, arguing she acquired interest in your property. These can take years and cost tens of thousands to defend the protection of separate homes. All of this is avoided by maintaining separate residences. Relationship ends, she goes to her home, you stay in yours. Done. No legal entanglement, no eviction proceedings, no property disputes, no months of hostile cohabitation, no expensive legal battles. Smart men over 60 recognize the ease of exit is not planning for failure. It's maintaining the clarity that prevents entrapment, that destroys both parties. Reason 7, the psychological territory. The seventh reason ties everything together, and smart men over 60 understand this more clearly than anyone who hasn't lived through the specific combination of experiences that produces this clarity. Home as physical manifestation of survival at this stage of life. A man's home is not just a physical asset he owns and maintains, it's the physical manifestation of everything he survived. Divorce that destroyed him financially and emotionally, starting over from nothing at 40, 50, 55 years of rebuilding, while others had stable lives. Loss of family home, starting over in smaller place, grinding through years to regain what was taken, everything he rebuilt. Piece by piece, dollar by dollar, working extra years to recover from setback, sacrificing to regain stability, establishing security from chaos, creating foundation after earthquake, everything he protected, from creditors during hard times, from ex-partners who wanted more, from family members who needed help he couldn't afford, from his own impulses to give it away to undeserving people, from every threat to the stability he painstakingly built everything he chose for himself, after decades of choosing for everyone else, after years of his preferences coming last, after lifetime of accommodating others. This is the one thing that's entirely his. The first time in 60 years, everything reflects his choice. The sovereignty it represents. It's the one place on earth where everything is exactly as he decided it should be, without compromise, without negotiation, without managing another person's needs competing with his own. Every piece of furniture is where he put it, reflecting his preferences, not negotiated placement. Every routine runs as he designed it. Morning his way, evening his schedule, day his rhythm. Every morning begins on his terms, coffee his way, silence or music his choice, pace his preference. Every evening ends on his schedule, sleep when he wants, stay up if he wants, complete autonomy. This is not just about having a house. This is about having achieved sovereignty, personal autonomy, after 60 years of subordinating his preferences to others' needs. What sharing it actually means, allowing another person to move into that space, is not just a lifestyle decision, a relationship milestone, a sign of commitment, A generous gesture, it's a decision to share the most protected and most carefully built space in his entire life with someone who has not yet demonstrated, over sufficient time and with sufficient consistency, that she deserves that level of access to everything it represents. Smart men over 60 understand this, and they protect it accordingly. Not because they don't want connection, not because they're closed or damaged or incapable of genuine intimacy, but because they have lived long enough to understand exactly what they built, exactly what it cost them to build it, exactly what it would cost them to lose it to a decision made too quickly in a moment that felt different from what it actually was. When this boundary should ever be reconsidered, the critical question: are there circumstances where this boundary should be reconsidered? The conditions that would need to exist for a man over 60 to consider allowing a woman to move in? The following would need to be demonstrated over years, not months. Condition 1, demonstrated character over time, minimum 3 to 5 years of relationship. Consistency in behavior across all circumstances. Proven integrity when tested. No manipulation, dishonesty, or character revelations. Demonstration that curated version matches unedited version. Condition 2, complete financial independence. She has her own substantial assets. She has her own income, retirement. She demonstrates she needs nothing from him financially. Prenuptial level agreements protecting both parties. Legal clarity preventing any claims on his assets. Condition 3, mutual desire, not her need. She genuinely prefers living together for relationship reasons. Not driven by financial necessity, can't afford her own place. Not driven by age, loneliness, fear. Not driven by wanting to be taken care of. Genuinely mutual decision, not one-sided pressure. Condition 4, trial periods with reversibility, extended visits, weeks, months, with return to separate homes, both parties maintaining separate residences initially, gradual integration with ability to reverse, clear exit strategy if it doesn't work. Condition 5, legal protection, cohabitation agreement drafted by attorney, clearly establishing no property rights acquired, clearly establishing financial boundaries, clearly establishing she's guest resident, not acquiring ownership, protection against common law marriage, palimony, all legal claims. Even then, the question remains, even if all these conditions exist, the question a man over 60 must ask himself: is the potential benefit of living together worth the risk of losing the sovereignty I've spent years building? For many men, the honest answer is no, and that's not failure of love. That's wisdom applied to life design. Final thoughts. This is wisdom, not damage. Here's what everyone needs to understand about men over 60 who refuse to let women move in. This is not fear of commitment. They're often in committed relationships. Inability to be generous. They're generous in many ways. Emotional damage. They've processed and healed. Selfishness. They've spent 60 years being selfless. Inability to compromise. They've compromised enough for 3 lifetimes. This is wisdom earned through 6 decades of lived experience applied to protecting what matters most. The connection worth having does not require sharing a home. It requires sharing something far more valuable than physical space. It requires sharing honesty, genuine, not performed, mutual respect, demonstrated, not claimed, demonstrated character over time, years, not months, integrity in all circumstances, not just when convenient, that makes a man over 60 decide, on his own terms and in his own time, that someone has earned access to the most important space in his life. And that decision, when it comes from that place, is the only version of it that's ever worth making. But for most men over 60, that decision never comes. Not because they haven't found worthy women, but because the risk-reward calculation makes maintaining separate homes the wisest choice for the remainder of their lives. And that choice deserves respect, not judgment. Understanding, not pressure. Acceptance, not attempts to convince them otherwise. They've earned the right to design their final decades exactly as they choose. And if that design includes relationship without cohabitation, that's wisdom that deserves celebration, not criticism. Drop a comment about whether this changed how you think about this decision. Men over 60, have you made this choice? Women, does this help you understand the perspective? Subscribe, because this channel will continue examining life decisions that look simple from outside but are profoundly complex when you've lived enough to understand what's actually at stake. Stay sovereign, stay wise, and never apologize for protecting what you spent a lifetime building.